Mobile phones, internet, blogs, smartphones, iPads. New media are increasing their presence in our society and have important impacts on culture. Latin America, like most other parts of the world, is changed by new media, especially by mobile phones. There are, nevertheless, very important differences between that region and the other one. For Latin America, cell phones are not only a technology, they are a revolution. For some people, they are the first technology available, and for some others, they just completely change the way they communicate and interact. The question remains, how do mobile phones impact on Latin Americans? Latin Americans, as we know, have a different culture than ours. Therefore, to understand how mobile phone impacts on them, we have to know how they use their devices and how that is different from North Americans. Let's meet Gustavo, who will talk to us more about that topic.
Personally, I'm not a heavy cell phone user. I use it mostly to text, an alarm clock, and the occasional phone call to my family, and that's it. But I have lots of friends who are now starting to get smartphones, and they use it to Twitter and check Facebook. Also, cell phones were a big tool for us after the earthquake in 2010. Because since the power went down and the telephone lines collapsed, the only way to get information for the few 5 or 6 hours was to get on the internet on your smartphone.
This is interesting because Alan de Alvaron explains that Hispanics in general are heavy users of mobile phones, and they tend to use more features available on their devices.
I've been on the countryside of Chile a few times, for example this last summer, and I was surprised to see people living like in the middle of nowhere, and maybe they didn't have like hot water or that kind of stuff, but at least one person had a smartphone. And even if their reception was not good, they still had access to the internet, and that was like their main way to get information from the outside, especially when they have like young people living at home.
According to Susmita Dasgupta and her team, mobile phone growth is becoming more important because of internet access via this device. Manuel Castells and his peers even say that mobile phone could be the best way to access internet in developing countries. Those different uses of mobile phones bring important changes to Latin American societies. Let's explore how. Firstly, there are changes in communication between people. Based on Professor Sebastian Ureta's ethnographical study, the primary purpose of mobile phone is to communicate with members of the extended family who often live far away. It therefore helps to keep close relationships no matter the distance between people. Values of collectivism and family are consequently reinforced through the use of mobile phones. It explains why Latinos see that device as the only one to promote cultural values. Also, mobile phones play an important role for people's jobs. It seems that people now have access to jobs more easily because they are more reachable. According to Alejandrina Aguirre, reporter for Contenido, people who use their cell phones for the purpose of work make an average of 6 job-related calls every day. We can imagine how people who do not have cell phones are harmed. Based on Professors Munoz and Azdest's analysis, wireless technologies are strong drivers of developing countries' growth.
The little village of La Trojas is just 20 minutes drive up the hill from Tegucigalpa, the capital of Honduras. But it's a world away from modern communications technology. Until now, communication was in person, through the bus driver who delivered messages on his daily trips to and from the city. This family can now talk directly with their supplier for the leather they need to make their products and arrange delivery.
Consequences of the use of cell phones are also found on what is called the digital divide. This concept is commonly known as the gap between those who have access to technologies and those who don't. Susmita Dasgupta and her team explained that the wireless phone technology can reduce the digital divide because it can expand rapidly into peri-urban and rural areas where most poor households are located. Leonard Riverman, Dean of the Askin School of Business at the University of Calgary, also gives information about that subject.
People in the developing world are getting more access at an incredible rate, far faster than they got access to new technologies in the past. The digital divide is rapidly closing, and that's the mobile phone. The mobile phone is closing the digital divide because it's a much lower cost technology.
Some say that there is still an important digital divide because the gap between the rich and the poor is huge. For example, people with lower income use prepaid services instead of monthly plans. Marco Catorce, Director of Value and Added Services for America Mobile Group, talks about that phenomenon.
Prepaid is common in all emergent markets. It's not only Mexico. First of all, only 20% of the population has a bank account. So the most successful system is the prepaid.
Nevertheless, communication professors and researchers Cass and Rice argue that the mobile communication society brings fresh opportunities for upward social mobility and for bridging the digital divide. Another important phenomenon occurring with mobile phones is subculture. Subcultures, according to FDH, are built when like-minded individuals who feel neglected by societal standards get together and build their own sense of identity.
Also, according to Manuel Castells and his peers, the way in which young people adopt and appropriate mobile phone technology contributes to the construction of their own culture by means of differentiation from adults and especially from parents. This youth group has even more importance in Latin America, where family ties are generally stronger than in Western society. Even though mobile phones seem to be great, it is still seen by some Latin Americans as something very bad. Thus, moral panic is an interesting concept to explore. According to Dan Lafay, moral panic is a concept that describes a situation in which an individual, group, event, or condition is posited as a threat to society. Parents, firstly, are afraid of mobile phones. As Julian Sefton Green, professor at the University of Nottingham, explains, cell phones blur the boundaries between childhood and adulthood, or weaken children's ties with family and other institutions. For traditional institutions, it can also be seen as a threat because mobile phones move young people away from the traditional sphere of influences such as the home, educational system, and broadcast media, while providing an ever-widening range of socializing and identification options. There are clear evidences that Latin Americans are influenced and even changed by mobile phones. This new media carries a paradox for Latin Americans. At the same time as its adult families get closer even though they live far away, it also tears apart families because youth are becoming part of subcultures that dissociate them from traditional ties. Even though mobile phones can be seen as something really bad, they are still a key component in the economic development of Latin American countries. Looking at the growth of mobile phones in Latin America, we can imagine that Latin Americans and their countries will become more and more important in the international field.